So the two artists that we're going to look at today are Marc Chagall on the left and Rene Magritte. And we looked a little bit at Rene Magritte in the other video, but not Marc Chagall. Marc Chagall was a Jewish artist who escaped Russia, and most of his paintings are very dreamlike, very dreamy. A lot of them have to do with leaving Russia and his life before when he was a kid in Russia. But a lot of them have to do with life in Paris and his love and his wife. And you can see here, this is very dreamy like. It really couldn't happen in real life. And a lot of things in his pictures are misplaced or couldn't happen in real life where they're placed. And Rene Magritte's pictures always seem to put us in a view of another world, and they're otherworldly. And so if you look at this picture, it just kind of startles you and makes you think of what just happened, how did this happen, and what am I looking at? So here are some more of Marc Chagall's pictures, and you can see his influence here of his marriage on the left, and right here is what Jewish people get married under. It's called a chuppah, and you can see the fiddler over here, and you can see his Russian village down here. So it's very dreamlike. It's very, the people are floating. The images are smaller in the background, and they're just kind of floating around. But there is the Eiffel Tower here, which is kind of where he's at now. And then over here is another picture that's very dreamlike. It's got very religious overtones to it. So there you have it. It's very dreamy, very lots of things going on, lots of images. It's very drawn, like very not very painted. Here's another one, very dreamy. Again, his village in the background. In Russia, somebody's upside down. Here's either a goat or a horse. Somebody's milking a cow inside of it. A tree that represents a tree of life. Not sure what the green person is. I have to be quite honest with you. But again, shapes overlapping, houses upside down, people upside down, things that are very dreamy. Here's a view from Paris, a cat with kind of a human face, people flying, colors, very colorful, people with two faces, people floating, going both ways. So again, very dreamy, very symbolic, lots of symbols going on in his pictures. Very dreamy. So very different now is Rene Magritte, who again startles you, a view to another world, an eye that you're looking at, what is inside of the eye. What is the eye seeing? What are we seeing? So this, again, can be a very big influence. And this sort of influenced my picture as well. Here again, two views to another world. You pull back the curtain and what's happening in this dreamlike world that we see. And in this one is a picture in front of a window that looks just like what's outside of the window. What's happening? Two more very dreamy pictures. This would be usually a mountain that's in front of the ocean. Instead, it's this impossible world that's floating above the ocean that can't really happen. Or can it happen? Does it happen only in your dreams? And again, he has lots of clouds in his pictures, which I was influenced again to put into my picture. And over here, this with the horse and the person on the horse, what's happening? Is the background happening? Is the person disappearing in the trees? Is the person on the trees, not on the trees? Really take a look at the optical illusion that he's created, or the illusion that he's created. What kind of world is going on? What are we looking at? So I started with my dream brainstorm sheet that you have, and I just filled it out. it wasn't really a last dream I remember. It was sort of a memory that I took together. I was looking through some pictures that I had found at my parents' house, and a picture of my friend Mindy and I from um, right when we had graduated after college. And she's been my friend since we were in sixth grade, and she just passed away last year. And she was wearing these cow pants, and I was wearing this really crazy flowered hat. And I just remember the argument we had that night of who looked more ridiculous, me with the crazy flowered hat or her with the cow pants on. And when I saw the picture the other day, it just made me laugh and it made me cry. And I just wanted to call her up so badly and talk to her about it. And so that's the memory I had. And then that night I kind of did dream about it. So the colors that I'm thinking about are blues because I'm sad, and pinks because pink and purples were her favorite colors. And then, so I think about Mindy and her cow pants and the telephone wanting to call her. And what words were using was mostly laughter. And I'm thinking about flowers for some reasons, and eyes and the tears that came to my eyes, and sadness and laughter. And so, now you know a lot more about me than you probably ever wanted to know. Um, so here's some of the process that I went through. So after I filled out my sheet, I decided to start with my portrait of me, and I used my picture from my micrography. Now, if you need to trace your portrait like you did in micrography, you can go ahead and do that. That is not a problem. But I'm not going to bore you with my whole drawing video, but I just wanted to show you some of the highlights of it. And you can see I'm, working on my eyes, and then you'll see I start using my pencil to measure parts of my face and where they belong together from my picture. And so I sped it up a little bit. So you could start seeing that I start measuring and just sort of sketching it in. And then I start making sure that I start shading it in. And nothing's really going to be white on my face. It's all going to be shaded in. And I do that just with the regular pencil. And you could use a Q-tip. You can use a tissue paper to shade it in. But the more shading you get, the better you get. The better it looks. I use my fingers. And then you can get those real white spots with going back and using an eraser and get some really shiny spots. Like I try to get the shiny spots on my cheeks, and I just go back, and it looks really creepy right now. And then I end up cutting off my hair because I just wasn't into doing my hair as much, so I ended up cutting it off and using it to my advantage. So there's just me drawing and just using my techniques, and it was actually quite fun. I haven't drawn in a long time. So I finish up my face drawing, and then I'm going to put it aside for a little while until I get to my other parts. And you can see I'm going to finish it off in collage. I ended up drawing a giant eye, which I'm not going to sit and show you how I drew my giant eye. Then I do my background, and I do the wet on wet technique because that's my favorite. And I do the blues. I decided to do the blues, and that comes from my planning sheet. And then guess what? I changed my mind as I start laying out my design. I changed my mind and I decided I'm not going to go with the blues. I'm going to go with the pinks that were also on my planning sheet. So I go back and I repaint it pink. But I have, from my planning sheet, I had flowers on there, and I had clouds, and I had cows, and it's all from this moment that I had with my friend Mindy who passed away, and it's this dream, and it's a funny story, and it's also a sad story. And so I used instead of tears, I found butterflies, and so I used, here's me drawing clouds as part of my dream. And then I'm going to cut those out. So you don't have to draw everything on one piece of paper. You can draw them all on different pieces of paper and then cut them out. And that's what I did. I made my whole thing kind of a collage so that I could make mistakes and I can change them and I can move them around. And I can move everything around on my paper when I finished. But then instead of, so I found pictures in magazines of flowers, and then instead of the teardrops, I found butterflies, monarch butterflies, and it made so much sense to me to use the monarch butterflies because I was thinking about Day of the Dead and how the butterflies represent souls, and my friend had passed away. So instead of using tears, I used the butterflies coming out of the eye. And just the whole idea of the eye being the all-seeing. You know, I watch Lord of the Rings a lot, so the eye above it. And so I thought that would be really cool to add. So I finish up the clouds, and then you're going to see I'm going to move on. I'm going to change my background. And then the rest of the video is just shots of the changes that I make. So I'm just finishing up my clouds. I just want to show you how many layers I put in on each cloud and how much I take my time. So here we go. All of a sudden I decided I want a pink background. So I went over the blue and I just changed it to pink because I thought that would work better on my picture. And then I start arranging everything. And I move it around a couple times and decide where I'm going to put everything before I glue it down. I arrange it and I arrange it again and I arrange it again before I actually start gluing everything down. And then I noticed on my eye I had that little shadow there, so I decided I'm going to put shadows on everything to try to make them look like they're like coming up off the page. So you're going to see that. I start with the butterflies. So there's the butterflies coming out, and the cows are representative of my friend Mindy. And now over here you can see all the shading that I put in, especially around the edges of the paper. I spent a lot of time using colored pencil and adding shading. And then you could see around the butterflies that I added those little itty bitty shadows just to give it some look like they were coming up off the page. And a little bit on the cows and then on my face and around the clouds so that they looked like they were a little bit more dimensional and that they looked like they were coming up off the page. And I thought that was really important for me. But especially the time I spent around the edges of the picture was really important. And I think it really changed the look of the picture. So after I filled out my sheet, I decided to start with my... So I almost started playing the video again. Here's my finished one. And you can see it in its full beauty and glory. But you can see up here where I spent a lot of time really, and along all of the edges, I don't know if you could see all of the edges, but I really spent a lot of time with the colored pencil, a lot of time. And I really think it made a big difference in just the way that it just kind of came together. It doesn't look like just I painted it with the watercolors. The color pencils really just tied it together, and I really like how the shadows on the clouds and the butterflies kind of make it pop out a little bit. I know I said that before, but I think that for me, at least, the colored pencils really in the end was worth the extra effort. So we'll go over the steps on what you need to do. It was certainly not as hard as I anticipated it to be. And I hope you have fun with this project because I really, really enjoyed this project. This one was my favorite out of all of them, and I thought it wasn't going to be, but it turned out to be my most favorite. So I hope it turns out to be your most favorite too.